While I was washing dishes, a splash of water hit my husband's phone, and a woman's voice played from his voicemail, shattering everything I knew and turning me from his obedient wife into his worst nightmare. The rain pounded so hard it felt like icy needles stabbing through my coat as I trudged home from the market that evening. My hair was dripping, plastered to my cheeks, and my arms ached from carrying bags stuffed with groceries we probably couldn't afford. My jeans were soaked up to the knees. All I wanted was to sink into warmth, peel off these wet clothes, and pretend I didn't have a dozen errands still undone. But rest wasn't something waiting for me at home. Not anymore. I went home to keep surviving. My legs carried me automatically through puddles, water sloshing around my ankles. My mind was somewhere else, spinning with the week's expenses, Nathan's credit card bills, overdue invoices from Paige's school, and the nagging thought that I still hadn't called the plumber about the leaking sink. Lately, I forgot a lot of things. When I pushed open the apartment door, the silence hit me like a wall. It wasn't peaceful. It wasn't cozy. It was the kind of silence that felt like it swallowed all your noise and left you alone with the echo of your own breath. Nathan was sprawled across the couch, eyes locked on his phone, scrolling like nothing else existed. "Hey," I said quietly, dripping rain onto the hardwood as I wrestled my coat off my shoulders. "Hey, you're home," he muttered, not even glancing up. Same tone, same vacant eyes, same night replaying on a loop. Every evening I'd drop my purse on the kitchen counter and put the kettle on. The hiss of boiling water was often the loudest sound in our apartment. Nathan used to be the man who lit up talking about our export business. Late nights in the office, he'd stay awake plotting new strategies, his eyes burning with possibility. He'd call me from trade shows just to tell me about a breakthrough deal or the taste of street food in Bangkok. But then, 2 years ago, something shifted. Meetings started tiring him out. He said the business world was cutthroat, that he was sick of endless travel, that it was time for me to be home, where I belonged. He insisted family came first. He said I was needed at home more than at boardrooms. He asked me to quit. And like a fool, I did. I traded my heels and tailored blazers for grocery lists and cleaning supplies. I told myself it was noble, that love meant sacrifice. But Nathan didn't seem grateful. He started calling me just a housewife, rolling his eyes whenever I struggled to keep up with bills or errands. He'd scoff and say, "You can't even handle a few chores?" His mother, Mrs. Hughes, called every Sunday without fail, her voice syrupy and sharp all at once. "A woman's job is to keep her husband happy, Lynn. Otherwise, there's always someone else who will." Each word landed like a slap. And Nathan, he never defended me. Not once. Sometimes he'd mumble something vague to change the topic. Other times he'd stay glued to his phone, letting his mother's judgments pour over me like acid. I stopped hoping for him to stand up for me. I stopped hoping for much of anything. I told myself this was marriage. This was family. That love was worth the loneliness. 3 years ago, David, our CFO back then, pulled me aside after a board meeting. His voice was gentle, his eyes full of concern. "You've got one of the sharpest business minds I've ever worked with," he told me. "Don't let it go to waste." He offered me a way back, a new position, a chance to lead. But I said no. I told him Nathan needed me at home. Now Nathan spends more nights away than he spends beside me. He claims it's business, meetings, late dinners with clients. But when he comes home, he carries the faint scent of perfume I don't wear. When I ask, his eyes go cold. "Stop being paranoid," he snaps, as if my suspicion is the only problem tearing us apart. That night, my hands were submerged in soapy water, scrubbing at a crusted casserole dish as steam curled upward, fogging the glossy cabinet doors above the sink. My reflection shimmered there, distorted, almost unrecognizable. My hair was limp around my face, eyes sunken, mouth pressed into a line so thin it barely existed. I stared at that ghost and whispered, so low I wasn't sure if I'd said it out loud, "Is this who I've become? A ghost in my own life?" Behind me, the only sound was the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint rhythm of rain against the windows. Nathan's phone was lying on the counter near the sink, screen dark, a tiny droplet of water sliding off its edge. Then another drop splashed across the screen, waking it up, and before I could reach it, a voicemail started playing on speaker, loud and clear. A woman's voice spilled into the silence, silky and playful. "I miss you so much. Last night was amazing. Should we share a room on the next trip?" My entire body went cold. I felt my pulse pounding in my ears, drowning out the rain, the hum of the fridge, everything. My fingers lost their grip on the glass I was rinsing. It slipped from my hand and shattered in the sink, shards scattering like ice. I didn't even feel the cut on my thumb as I lunged for Nathan's phone. My wet fingers smeared across the screen as I unlocked it. He'd never bothered to change the code. The phone trembled in my hand as message after message appeared, stacked like a timeline of betrayal. Pictures, selfies. Vera's name blinking at the top of every chat thread. Vera, his new secretary. I scrolled, unable to stop myself, reading words that scraped at my chest like sandpaper. And there it was, in one of Nathan's own texts. She thinks she's worthless now that she quit work. Makes her easy to control. My vision blurred, black spots crowding the edges. The kitchen felt smaller, the air too thin. I dropped into the nearest chair, legs trembling, gripping Nathan's phone so hard my knuckles ached. I replayed every conversation, every fight, every time he'd called me paranoid. The truth hit me like a punch to the ribs. Nathan hadn't just wanted me at home. He'd needed me small, dependent, invisible. So he could lie. So he could keep secrets. I kept scrolling. Another thread flashed onto the screen, this time a series of bank transfer receipts. Nathan sending money, thousands, to Vera's personal account. Attached to one transfer was a message. "Once we finalize the sale, we're free." I stared at those words, feeling my stomach twist into knots. All those years I'd defended him, made excuses, believed in the vows we'd taken. All the nights I'd stayed up stretching pennies so he'd never feel burdened. And all while his mother whispered poison in my ear about keeping my husband happy, or losing him. I wiped my eyes roughly and said to the empty kitchen, voice shaking, "No more." Moving on instinct alone, I pushed up from the chair and carried the phone to the laundry closet. I reached behind a stack of folded towels and pulled out my old laptop, its plastic casing scuffed and faded. Fingers trembling, I plugged it in and started backing up every file, every message, every bank receipt. My breath came shallow and sharp as the progress bar crawled across the screen. Each percent closer felt like pulling a brick off my chest. Because this time, I wasn't going to vanish into silence. This time, I was going to fight back. When the last file saved, I closed the laptop gently and stared at Nathan's phone still clutched in my hand. My heart thudded like it might crack my ribs. Carefully, I wiped away every smudge and droplet from the screen and the sides, rubbing it clean on the hem of my shirt until it shone like I'd never touched it. I scrolled back to the home screen, closed all the apps, and set the phone back down near the sink, exactly where it had been. Angled just the same way, as though nothing had happened, as though I'd never picked it up at all. Only then did I let out a long, shaking breath. My fingers hovered over the phone for a long time. Then I typed David's number and pressed send before I could talk myself out of it. The dial tone felt like it echoed in my ribs. When he picked up, his voice was warm and calm, the same as it had always been. "Lynn. Everything okay?" I closed my eyes. The words tasted like rust on my tongue. "David, I need to see you. It's urgent." Silence crackled through the line. Then his voice came back, low and serious. "Tell me where. I'll come right now." That night, the kitchen smelled of garlic and tomatoes as I stirred a pot of sauce on the stove, trying to look normal. Nathan walked in whistling under his breath, keys jingling in his hand like he was a man with nothing to hide. "Smells good," he said, leaning over to kiss my cheek. His breath carried a trace of something sweet and musky, a cologne I'd never known him to wear. I forced a smile, my lips trembling. "You're home early," I murmured, keeping my eyes on the bubbling sauce. "Yeah, well, early start tomorrow. I'm heading out of town for a few days. Business trip." He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door, shrugged off his jacket, and walked to the bedroom like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. I waited until I heard the dresser drawers slide open. Then I wiped my hands on a dish towel and crept into the bedroom doorway. Nathan stood beside the bed, folding shirts into his suitcase. His phone was plugged in on the nightstand. He hummed an off-key tune as he lifted something from the drawer. A flash of red caught my eye, a wisp of lace dangling from his fingers. He paused to smooth it out before laying it carefully on top of his folded clothes. My stomach twisted into knots. It was a red lace nightgown, barely more than scraps of fabric and delicate straps, a style I'd never owned, a color I never wore. Nathan looked up and caught me staring. He flashed a grin that made my skin crawl. I cleared my throat and forced a small smile, trying to sound casual. "Dinner's almost ready," I said. "Yeah, I've got that trip tomorrow," he said lightly, as if we were just any couple, as if nothing was unraveling between us. He hesitated for half a second, then quickly folded the red lace nightgown and slipped it beneath a layer of shirts in his suitcase. I forced a swallow. My voice came out soft and even, though my insides felt like glass splintering. "Go ahead with your trip," I said. "I'll handle things here." He zipped his suitcase shut and shot me a look that was half smirk, half sneer. "That's my good girl." The words made me feel like a dog that had learned how to heel. He left just after midnight. His suitcase rolled behind him as he gave me one last casual wave from the doorway. "Don't wait up," he said, and then he was gone. I stood frozen in the hallway until the click of the elevator doors swallowed the last echo of his footsteps. 10 minutes later, I was in a quiet corner booth at a 24-hour diner, the neon sign buzzing outside like a swarm of bees. David slid into the seat across from me, still wearing his suit, his tie slightly loosened, his eyes wide with worry. "Lynn, tell me everything." My throat closed up as soon as I tried to speak. I opened the folder I'd brought and pushed it across the table. David flipped through the screenshots and bank statements, his brow tightening with each page. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. "He's been siphoning company funds?" I nodded, unable to trust my voice. Tears prickled the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them back. "And he's cheating, David. With Vera." David exhaled a shaky breath, shutting the folder. He reached across the table, his hand warm over mine. "Lynn, you have to come back to the company. Let me help you handle this. You're the only person who can fix it." At dawn, David and I sat in a sleek, glass-walled office downtown, the city still pink with the first light of morning. Across from us sat an attorney in a crisp navy suit and thin-rimmed glasses. Her name was Michelle Park. Her voice was calm, her eyes sharp as scalpels. "I've reviewed the evidence you provided," she said, tapping the pile of papers on the conference table. "There's a clear case for both marital infidelity and financial misconduct. You're well within your rights to file for divorce and to protect your share of the company." My hands twisted in my lap. "Will it get ugly?" Michelle gave me a look that was both gentle and unflinching. "It might. But Nathan has left you vulnerable for too long. The sooner we act, the better. I recommend we freeze any further asset transfers, especially from business accounts. We'll also prepare documents for the board to vote Nathan out of his executive position. The shareholders will want to know the truth. You've got leverage now, Lynn. Use it." I stared at her, a strange mix of terror and relief swelling in my chest. My whole life I'd believed keeping quiet was the safest way to survive. That if I just worked harder, stayed loyal, swallowed my doubts, everything would eventually be okay. But as Michelle slid the papers across the table toward me, I realized something I'd never truly believed until that moment. Silence wasn't safety. Silence was a cage. I took the pen from her hand. The pen felt heavier than it should have, like I was signing my own life away, or maybe reclaiming it. I scrawled my name at the bottom of page after page, my hand shaking so hard that my signature looked like a stranger's. Michelle kept sliding documents toward me in neat stacks. Each one felt like a brick laid in the foundation of something new. When I finished, she gathered the papers, her voice soft but firm. "That's it, Lynn. You've taken the first step." I blew out a shaky breath. My throat burned. I realized I'd been holding back tears for the last hour. I blinked them away and whispered, "I've cried enough." And for the first time in years, I felt free. Across the city, the neon skyline glowed over glass towers, throwing ribbons of red and blue into the wet streets below. Meanwhile, Nathan and Vera lay curled together in a plush hotel suite high above it all. Vera giggled, draping herself across Nathan's chest. "When we're done with this, we'll disappear somewhere warm. Just you and me." Nathan smirked, running a thumb along her jaw. "Soon, baby. The money's almost ready. Once the sale goes through, I'll transfer everything." Vera pressed her lips to his, murmuring, "I love you." Nathan opened his mouth to answer, but before he could speak, the door to the suite slammed open so violently that it bounced off the wall. Floodlights and radio static filled the room. 3 men in navy jackets stamped with the words Financial Crimes Unit poured inside, guns drawn. Behind them came 2 uniformed police officers, their faces stone hard, voices barking commands. "Nathan Hughes, you're under arrest for suspicion of corporate embezzlement, fraud, and money laundering. Hands where we can see them." Vera let out a scream so shrill it seemed to peel the wallpaper. She scrambled off the bed, clutching the bedsheet to her chest as though it could shield her from what was happening. Nathan's eyes went wide, his entire face draining of color. "Wait! Wait! This is a mistake!" he shouted, trying to sit up, but 2 officers lunged forward and pinned him to the mattress. Vera sobbed, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "Oh my God, Nathan, what is happening?" Nathan struggled as metal cuffs clamped around his wrists. He shouted over the chaos, spit flying. "I want my lawyer! You can't do this! You have no proof!" The officers dragged him off the bed, still half-dressed, and shoved him toward the door. He stumbled into the hallway outside the suite, flanked by agents gripping his arms. As they hustled him toward the elevators, his wild eyes scanned the corridor and found me. I was standing by the lobby entrance, David beside me, his arms crossed over his chest. The marble floor gleamed beneath my heels. I felt strangely calm, like I was floating outside my own body, watching someone else's life unfold. Nathan's mouth fell open. "Lynn?" he croaked. "What the hell are you doing here?" I stepped forward, my chin lifting. My voice felt like glass, cold, clear, sharp enough to cut. "Thanks for giving me all the evidence I needed." His brows slammed together, fury sparking in his eyes. You set me up." David stepped closer, speaking low and even. "You set yourself up, Nathan." Nathan turned back to me, eyes pleading now. "Lynn, please, we can fix this. Don't do this to us. You don't know what you're doing." I tilted my head slightly, studying him like a puzzle I'd finally solved. "The company is no longer yours," I said softly, "and neither is my life." The officers pulled him away before he could answer, his protests echoing off the lobby's marble columns. Vera was led out moments later, still weeping, hair tangled, wrapped in a hotel robe as cameras from arriving reporters began to flash. I stood there, breathing in the cool air of the lobby, watching the revolving doors spin as the police escorted them into waiting cars. David slipped his hand gently over mine. "You okay?" he murmured. I swallowed hard. My voice came out quiet but sure. "I think for the first time in a long time I will be." 3 days later, I stood at the head of a long mahogany table in a glass-walled conference room, the city skyline stretching out behind me in brilliant winter sunlight. Every seat around that table was filled, board members, senior partners, a couple of outside auditors. David sat near the middle, nodding encouragement each time I looked his way. The air in the room hummed with a tension that felt both electric and fragile, like a cable pulled tight. The chairman, Mr. Caldwell, cleared his throat and spoke into the hush. "Before we proceed, I think we all owe a debt of gratitude to Lynn. She co-founded this business. She built it piece by piece with Nathan. She knows every contract, every client, every pivot we've made since day one." His gaze swept the table. "And now she's protected us from a scandal that could have destroyed everything." A few murmurs of agreement rose around the room. A woman from legal raised her hand. "I'd like to formally move that Lynn Hughes be appointed interim CEO, effective immediately." The words landed inside me like an unexpected spark, igniting something I thought had burned out years ago. For a moment, it was as though the air itself thickened around me, pressing against my ribs, making it hard to breathe. I'd been gone for 3 years. 3 years of feeling invisible, believing I'd surrendered my place in this world the day I chose to step away. I'd convinced myself that the company had carried on without me, that the people who'd once stood shoulder to shoulder with me had forgotten the late nights, the impossible deadlines, the laughter and exhaustion that had built this place brick by brick. And yet here they were. Board members, partners, colleagues, faces lined with fatigue and loyalty, looking at me as if I was still the woman who'd helped create this company from nothing, as if they'd been waiting for me to come back. For a heartbeat, I didn't know whether to cry or stand taller. But deep down, a flicker of pride unfurled in my chest like a flag catching the wind. I realized I hadn't disappeared. I'd simply been waiting for the right moment to return. Mr. Caldwell nodded solemnly. "All those in favor?" A forest of hands rose. No hesitations, no abstentions. The motion carried in less than 15 seconds. David leaned forward, his voice gentle. "Welcome back, Lynn." I swallowed hard, fighting tears. The title didn't feel like victory. It felt like coming home. That afternoon, I was still in my office, sunlight spilling across the glass walls. Papers were spread across my desk, half-finished contracts waiting for my signature. I was reviewing a contract when the door swung open without a knock. Mrs. Hughes stood there, unannounced, her pearls glinting under the fluorescent lights. Her face was a mask of tight-lipped fury, her eyes narrowed as if she could burn me down with a look. She clutched her handbag like a weapon, her knuckles white. "Lynn," she hissed, stepping inside without invitation. "How dare you do this to my son? You've ruined his life, our family, everything we built." Her voice trembled, but it wasn't just anger. There was a crack in it, a desperate edge that hadn't been there before. I leaned back in my chair, my hands steady on the desk, and met her gaze. The woman who once made me shrink with her syrupy judgments now seemed smaller, frailer, like a storm that had lost its wind. "Mrs. Hughes," I said calmly, my voice like glass. "Nathan ruined himself. He lied. He stole. He betrayed me. And you—" I paused, letting the weight of years settle between us. "You told me it was my job to keep him happy, to stay quiet, to be less so he could be more." Her lips parted, but no words came. Her eyes darted to the floor, then back to me, softer now, pleading. She took a step closer, her voice dropping to a strained whisper. "Lynn, please. He's all I have. He made mistakes, but he's your husband. You loved him once. Don't destroy him. I'm begging you." I stood, my heels clicking softly on the polished floor as I rounded the desk. For the first time, I towered over her, not in height, but in presence. I thought of every Sunday call, every barbed word she'd flung at me, every time she'd made me feel like I was nothing. "Maybe you should have taught your son better," I said, my voice ice cold. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a company to run." Her face crumpled, tears welling in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. I gestured toward the door, and she turned, her shoulders hunched, her pearls catching the light as she shuffled out. The door clicked shut behind her. I closed my eyes and exhaled, feeling something heavy lift off my chest. 2 weeks later, Nathan sat across from me in the polished conference room, a single manila envelope lying between us on the table. He looked smaller than I remembered, hair disheveled, suit wrinkled, dark circles carved under his eyes. His fingers trembled as he flipped through the divorce papers. He didn't try to talk me out of it anymore. The fight was gone from his eyes. "So this is it," he said finally, voice hoarse. "All those years. Gone." I met his gaze evenly. "All those years were mine too, but only one of us was fighting for them. He looked down, throat working. I pushed the pen toward him. "Sign it, Nathan." And he did, without another word. By the following Monday, the board had officially stripped him of his executive title. His shares were seized under fraud provisions in the company's founding agreements. In the end, he walked away with nothing but debts and a name forever linked to scandal. Vera fared no better. The same morning Nathan's resignation went public, Human Resources called her into a meeting. She left the building 30 minutes later, eyes red, face pale, carrying a single cardboard box of her belongings. By the end of the week, industry contacts were quietly informed she was blacklisted. No reputable firm would touch her after being tied to embezzlement and affair rumors. I didn't feel pity. I simply erased her number from my phone and deleted every photo where her smile once looked sincere. Her name would fade into whispers and footnotes, and that was punishment enough. It was pouring rain the day I returned to the office as CEO. The lobby smelled like wet pavement and fresh coffee. I stepped out of the elevator and froze. A crowd had gathered, employees from every department lining the hallway. For one charged, silent moment, no one moved. Then David started clapping. One by one, the others joined in until thunderous applause roared off the marble walls. My throat tightened. My steps felt light as I walked through them. People patted my arms, squeezed my hands, whispered, "Welcome back." I was no longer the silent wife scrubbing floors and swallowing tears. I was Lynn again. And this time, they saw me. Mrs. Hughes kept calling me. Voicemails poured in one after another, her voice swinging between icy rage and syrupy pleas. "This is your fault, Lynn. You've ruined my son's life. You've destroyed our family. How can you live with yourself?" I'd listen for a few seconds, then press delete. Over and over. Until one afternoon, sitting at my kitchen table with sunlight spilling across the floor, I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over her name. And then, with a single flick, I blocked her number. I set the phone down and exhaled. A smile curled at the corner of my lips as a wave of relief rolled through my chest. The silence that followed felt like freedom. A week later, I stood before the family court judge, my lawyer beside me, papers neatly stacked in front of us. Nathan wasn't there. His attorney came alone, looking tired and defeated. The courtroom smelled faintly of floor polish and old paper. My heart pounded as the judge adjusted her glasses and glanced down at the documents. "Given the evidence of marital misconduct and financial fraud," she said crisply, "this court awards sole custody of Paige Hughes to her mother, Lynn Hughes. The marital home, and a majority share of marital assets, will remain with Mrs. Hughes." I closed my eyes as a tear slipped free, but it wasn't a tear of sorrow. It was a tear of finality, of doors closing and new ones opening. I whispered, "Thank you, Your Honor," and meant it with every piece of my being. Nathan had been released on bail while the investigation continued. He showed up at my doorstep a week later. No warning, no call ahead. Just him, standing there in the hallway outside my apartment, looking like a man who'd forgotten how to stand tall. His hair was unkempt. His shirt hung loose on his frame. His eyes were hollow, as though someone had scooped out the spark that once lived there. "Lynn," he croaked, "please, don't do this. I know I messed up, but we had something. You loved me once. We can fix this. I swear I'll change." I studied him, feeling almost nothing. Just a distant ache for the years I'd wasted waiting for him to become a man he never wanted to be. "I'm not the woman you thought you could break," I said calmly. "Good luck, Nathan." I closed the door, and for the first time, I didn't look back. After months of fighting to reclaim my life and my company, I stood on a sleek stage beneath the glow of spotlights, facing a sea of people gathered for our company's first Growth and Innovation Summit. The banners overhead bore our new slogan, and behind me, a massive screen cycled through slides of rising charts, new markets, fresh partnerships. My palms were damp around the edges of my speech cards, but I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I looked out across the faces. Engineers who'd stayed past midnight perfecting prototypes. Sales managers who'd fought for every deal. Staff who'd believed in me when Nathan hadn't. People who'd seen me vanish into silence and return stronger than I'd ever been. I cleared my throat, my voice echoing gently in the hush. "When I came back to this company," I began, "I wondered if I'd missed my chance, if the years I'd spent away had erased my place here. But you welcomed me back, and together we turned one of the worst scandals in our history into a foundation for something better." I paused, scanning the room. My gaze drifted to the screen behind me, where photos of new product launches and international offices glowed in crisp color. Last quarter, we hit record profits. We opened new markets in Europe and Asia, and more importantly, we rebuilt the trust that holds this place together. A murmur of pride rippled through the crowd. As the applause softened, a flicker of memory cut through the brightness of the lights and the warmth of the room. Just last week, Nathan had been sentenced, 18 months in prison for financial fraud and corporate theft. Part of me wished it hadn't ended that way, but choices had consequences and integrity had to mean something, or it meant nothing at all. I pushed the thought aside and took a steadying breath. I used to believe that sacrifice was love, that if I gave enough of myself, worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, I could keep everything from falling apart. I thought letting go of my dreams was proof of loyalty. I paused again, my voice growing stronger as I continued. But sometimes standing up for yourself is the only way to save everything. The only way to protect the people who matter, and the person you used to be before you forgot yourself. A hush fell over the auditorium, as if the room itself were holding its breath. I felt every eye on me, felt the weight of the past and the bright, thrilling possibility of the future stretching out before me like an open road. "So, from today on," I said, my voice clear and resolute, "this company stands for integrity, for fairness, for the people who make it what it is. And I promise you, I'll never forget who I am again." Applause erupted, swelling into a roar that rolled across the room like thunder. David stood off to the side of the stage, clapping hard, a smile on his face that was more than professional. It was proud, and full of something warmer. And for the first time in years, I felt like my life, and this company, was finally mine. One bright morning, I stood in my new office, high above the city, sunlight pouring across my desk. The glass walls shimmered with golden light, and outside cars crawled through the streets like tiny silver beetles. I rested my hand on the cool surface of my desk and breathed in deeply. The air smelled faintly of fresh coffee and possibility. For the first time in years, my body felt light, as though I'd shed 1,000 invisible chains. I was no longer afraid of my own silence, no longer apologizing for my space in the world. When I glanced down into the lobby below, I saw David standing there, looking up toward the mezzanine. He held 2 coffees in one hand, his suit jacket slung casually over his shoulder. Our eyes met, and he lifted the cups with a small smile, as if to say, "I've got you." He'd become my steady place in the storm without ever trying to save me, and somehow, that made me trust him even more. We walked side by side toward the park, the city alive around us with chatter and rustling leaves. David didn't speak right away. He never filled silence just to fill it. But when he finally did, his voice was quiet, as if sharing a secret. "You're different now," he said. "You shine. I've always believed you could." I felt the sting of tears but blinked them away before they could fall. My voice came out softer than I meant it to. I thought love meant sacrifice. But maybe love means being seen and respected. David took my hand, his fingers warm and sure around mine. We strolled under the canopy of trees, dappled sunlight playing over our path. The breeze smelled faintly of blooming magnolia. I found myself speaking without even realizing it, the words tumbling out in a quiet, measured voice. While I was washing dishes, water hit my husband's phone. Then his voicemail played. I fell apart, but I built an empire instead. And I found someone who sees me, not just as a wife, but as a woman worth everything. The truth of it settled over me like a gentle weight. And as we kept walking, hand in hand, I realized that for the first time in my life, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living.